It started with a photo, one I shouldn't have had, a black and white image of a man in a chair, wires on his temples, a mirror on the wall behind him, and the face was mine. Or it looked like mine. Same eyes, same jawline. But the date on the back said 1962, and I was born in '64. That's when the headaches began, then the dreams, then the words I don't remember learning, coming out of my mouth like I'd spoken them forever. I thought I'd had a normal life, college, a job, a few lost years in my 20s, but the gaps were too clean, too neat. Something's been edited. They told me I volunteered, that I wanted to help, but I never signed anything, never agreed to forget. And now I'm remembering things that feel older than I am, which means someone put them there. It's strange how the mind protects itself, how it seals over damage like scar tissue, covering what it can't process with something smooth, blank, painless. I always thought my childhood was unremarkable, quiet. But lately, when I try to picture it, there's static where memory should be, like a corrupted tape. Something's there, but not playing correctly. I remember a room, not mine, not familiar. White walls, or maybe pale green. Hard to say. There was a chair in the center, sturdy, metal, institutional. I was sitting in it, I think. Or maybe I was watching someone else. I keep seeing myself from the corner of the room like I wasn't inside my own body. There were wires, I think, attached to my arms, something cold on my skin. A sound always comes with it, a low humming, and then music. A slow, looping melody, almost childish, like a lullaby warped by repetition. I don't know if it was playing in the room or just in my head. Sometimes it comes back when I'm falling asleep, those 3 notes, over and over, like a memory refusing to die. I mentioned it once to a friend. I said, "Isn't it weird how sometimes you hear songs you don't know, but they feel like they're yours?" He looked at me like I'd asked something deeply personal, said I was probably just tired, but I wasn't tired, I was waking up. I began having flashes, not dreams, but slices of something real, like Polaroids shoved into my brain. A hallway lined with blue doors, a woman in a nurse's uniform who never blinked, a glass of water placed on a table, then taken away before I could reach it. Always the chair, always that same sterile room. One day I saw a man crossing the street in a grey coat. I froze. I knew him. Not from work, not from life, from that room. He turned, caught my stare, and I swear for a moment his smile dropped, like he recognized me too. Then he kept walking. The next morning, I found a spot on my arm I'd never noticed. A small circular scar just above the elbow. I pressed it and something flashed, just an image, a mirror. My own face, younger, strapped to something, eyes wide, pupils blown. I told myself it was a false memory. Something I picked up from a movie or a book, but it kept happening. The same scene, over and over, getting longer each time. Now there were voices, men speaking calmly, asking me to recall certain numbers, asking if I still felt like myself. And always the chair. I started avoiding mirrors, not out of fear exactly, just discomfort. My reflection didn't line up with how I felt inside. Sometimes my eyes seemed too sharp. Sometimes they looked like someone else's. I tried writing it all down, every fragment, but my handwriting changed halfway through the notebook. Different slant, different spacing. The words became erratic, paranoid. The sentence, "I didn't consent to this," appears 5 times in a row on one page. I don't remember writing it once. When I confronted my mother about a scar on my neck, I couldn't explain. She just shook her head, said I was a strange child, quiet, obedient. "You did what you were told," she said. "You always did." Then she changed the subject. I started seeing myself in other places. In old yearbooks I never bought. In group photos I don't recall posing for, always in the back row. always slightly turned, like I didn't belong. One day, I woke up and my mouth was already moving. I was speaking in a language I didn't recognize, calmly, like reciting. I grabbed my phone and recorded it. I played it back. It was English, just words I hadn't meant to say. Phrases like baseline adjustment complete and conditioned memory restored. I felt sick, like I'd been hollowed out. That night, I sat in the dark and let the silence stretch. Then I heard it again. The music, 3 notes, the same ones from the chair, and I couldn't tell if I was remembering something real or if someone had planted it. I started digging, not because I wanted to believe it, but because I needed to disprove it. That's what I told myself. I'd find something, an old film, a case study, anything, that would show I'd simply misunderstood, that the flashes were fiction or, at worst, psychological noise from a mind under stress. But the more I looked, the more the pieces started to click. It began with a search on classified research programs from the 50s and 60s. There were hundreds, some redacted into meaninglessness, others just missing. But one name kept surfacing like a bruise under the skin: MK Ultra, the CIA's mind control program. Real, declassified. It ran for years under the pretense of behavioral engineering. They used LSD, hypnosis, sensory deprivation, memory implantation. People were dosed without their knowledge. Some never left the hospital. Some were told they volunteered. I found old newspaper scans, black and white photos of wide-eyed men in restraints, handwritten reports filled with terms I'd seen in my dreams. Ego dissociation, verbal override conditioning, identity rewrite. It all sounded clinical, precise, and monstrous. One document in particular made my breath catch. It was a grainy scan of a subject registry. No names, just dates, case numbers, and status notes. Next to Subject 108, it read, "Responsive to layered suggestion, memory altered, compliant behavior sustained." I printed it, stared at it for hours. The number 108 felt heavy, like something buried deep inside my ribs had stirred. I showed it to a former professor of mine, a man who used to work in cognitive studies. He glanced at it, then handed it back with a shrug. "Conspiracy trash," he said. "People see patterns where they want to." But his hands were shaking. I noticed that. I visited the university library where I supposedly studied in 1985. The woman at the archive desk searched for my student record. "Nothing under that name," she said. "You sure you went here?" I nodded. She smiled. "You'd be surprised how often people forget where they graduated." I hadn't forgotten. I went to my childhood home just to be near something that felt certain, but it had been gutted. New owners, no trace of anything. I asked if they'd ever found boxes in the attic, photos, tapes. The man frowned. "We found a few things," he said, "but they were blank." He said it twice. They were blank. That night, I went through an old suitcase I hadn't touched in years. Under a layer of clothes, I found an envelope. No name, no stamp, just a folded photograph. It showed a hospital room. Stark, clean, mid-century design. A man in a chair, wires running to a machine behind him. He was turned just enough that his face wasn't fully visible, but I knew it was me. I took it to a photo lab, asked about the paper, the age, anything. The technician studied it, flipped it over, raised an eyebrow. "This stock hasn't been manufactured since 1979, he said. "You sure this is you?" "I think so," I said. He looked at me for a long moment and said, "Then who took the picture?" That night, I called my sister, asked her if she remembered me going to the hospital as a kid. "You were sick a lot," she said, "but you were always home again after a day or two." I asked if she remembered the music box, the one that played the same 3 notes. She paused, then said, "We never had a music box. I'm losing the ability to trust people." Or maybe they're telling the truth, and the edits went deeper than I thought. It's not just that I forgot, it's that no one else remembers. Even when I showed someone the photo, they said it looked fake. You can do anything with AI these days, they laughed. But I saw their face change when they looked closer, like something inside them moved, then recoiled. I know what I'm finding is real, because the more I uncover, the more the music comes back. Not just in dreams anymore. I heard it on the bus, on a phone hold line, in a child's toy flickering in a window. The melody doesn't belong to me, but it's following me anyway. I didn't expect to find anyone else. This always felt like a solitary unraveling, like whatever they did to me was custom built, designed to isolate. But then I found the forum. It was buried 3 layers deep on a server with no name, the kind of site that looked abandoned at first, like a glitch. Just a white screen with a blinking cursor and the words, "Are you remembering too?" I typed yes. It opened a message board. Threads with dates for titles, no usernames, most posts made no sense, scattered phrases, countdowns, song lyrics, medical codes, but one kept showing up across different threads, subject 87. I followed it to a series of messages written over years, someone describing the same dreams, the same chair, the same 3 notes of music. I read every word like scripture. I needed to know if they were still alive. The last post was just coordinates. They led to a small town in upstate New York, quiet and decaying. I drove 8 hours to get there. My hands didn't stop shaking the entire way. The address was a trailer parked behind a shuttered gas station. I approached slowly, unsure of what I'd say. A dog barked from somewhere in the woods, sharp and sudden, then vanished into silence. I knocked twice. He opened the door without a word. He looked older than the photos, if they were even his. Gaunt, yellow-gray skin, eyes sunken like he hadn't slept in years. He stared at me for a long time before speaking. "You shouldn't have come here." I told him about the photo, the music, the feeling that I'd been rewritten. He nodded once, sat down on the edge of a torn mattress, and lit a cigarette with trembling hands. "I used to think they did it once," he said. "One experiment, one protocol. But it loops. That's the trick. You never left. They just made you believe you did." I asked if he remembered what they did to him. He laughed. "I remember what they want me to remember. And when I remember something real, I know it's real because it hurts." He showed me his arms, lined with scars, circular patterns like burn marks or injection sites. Some of them looked surgical, precise. Others were frantic, self-inflicted. "I dig when I start to hear it again," he said. "When the music starts up, that's how they reboot you. You think it's memory, but it's programming. That melody's like a key." I asked who they were. He went quiet. Eyes narrowed. Then he whispered, "Sometimes I think it's us, a version of us, sent back to test ourselves." I wanted to leave, but I needed more. He handed me a manila folder, thick with papers and photos, most of them redacted or warped. He said he stole it from a VA clinic 20 years ago. Inside was a page with a familiar number at the top. Sutton 8, my number. He pointed to a paragraph highlighted in yellow. Cross-contamination between subjects 87 and 108 suspected. Behavioral echoes observed. I looked at him, horrified. He just smiled. "That's why you found me. You were told to." I backed away. "No, I found you because you left a trail." "No," he said. "You found me because they wanted you to see what happens when you remember too much." His voice cracked on the last word. He grabbed his head like something was tearing through from inside. He screamed, short and sudden, and then began rocking back and forth. His lips moved, but no sound came out. Then he started humming, the same 3 notes, over and over. I ran. I don't remember getting back to the car. I don't remember the first hour of the drive home, but I remember his face as I looked back at the trailer. He wasn't afraid. He looked relieved. like his part was done, and now maybe mine was beginning. I don't trust my memories anymore. That's the worst part. Not the nightmares, not the paranoia, but the betrayal of my own mind. Sometimes I wake up with entire events freshly etched into my thoughts, like a birthday I don't remember having, a woman's face I've never seen in real life, or the smell of a house I've never visited, and they feel real, more vivid than anything else in my life. Stronger than the day I graduated, stronger than the face of my father. But when I try to place them on a timeline, they collapse. I've begun writing them down, cataloging them like artifacts. Some contradict each other. Some rewrite the same day in two completely different ways. In one, I was in California. In another, I was in a hospital room on the East Coast. Same date, same clothes, different lives. I told myself this was trauma, disassociation, maybe early dementia, but it's not decay, it's structure, intentional, repeating. There are patterns, names that echo through the memories, codes, always 4 digits, always whispered just before the image dissolves. A phrase, state-induced compliance confirmed, that shows up in dreams, carved into elevator doors, floating across pages I've never read. I see a specific ceiling fan over and over, always turning clockwise, always above me while something is being done to my body that I can't see. And the chair, the metal one, it keeps showing up in impossible places, between subway stops, inside bathrooms, in waiting rooms that don't exist. I tried visiting a neurologist, desperate for some external explanation. He ran tests, brain scans, cognitive checks. Everything came back normal, too normal. He looked at the screen for a long time, then said, "You've got unusually clean neural patterns for your age." He didn't smile. He handed me a pamphlet and walked out of the room. The front page read, "Coping with false memory syndrome." But what if they're not false? What if the real ones are? What if every anchor I've ever trusted, my name, my education, my preferences, was assigned? What if someone sat across from me once, clipboard in hand, and selected what I would like, what I would fear, who I would become? I see glimpses of a younger version of myself, strapped down, mouth gagged, being shown slides of horrific images, then reassured with a calm voice, over and over, until the images no longer affected me. Desensitization, they'd call it. Programming, I'd call it now. I found a video online, grainy footage of a test subject from the early MK Ultra days. The man mumbled incoherently while electrodes pulsed against his temples. Behind the one-way mirror, 2 figures stood and took notes. I recognized one of them, the shape of the face, the way he tilted his head. He looked like me. Not entirely, but enough to make my stomach twist. That night I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw not one, but 2 versions of myself, one watching, one being watched, and I couldn't tell which one I was. The mirror in my bathroom now feels like a confrontation. Some mornings, my face looks wrong, off-center, a millimeter lower on one side, a freckle I don't remember having. I took a photo and compared it to an old ID. They're not the same, and I can't prove they ever were. I've stopped telling people. They just think I'm unraveling. And maybe I am, but not the way they think. This isn't madness. This is memory returning, cracking through the surface like light through a sealed vault. Sometimes I hear a whisper just before I fall asleep, a voice saying, "You're almost through, keep going." It sounds like encouragement, but also like instruction. What if the goal was never to erase me? What if the goal was to replace me? Not remove the self, but layer it with other selves, other functions, other scripts, to create something that could live convincingly as a man, but activate when needed. What if that's what I am? A function wrapped in flesh. And now, whatever they buried is waking up. They know I've been remembering. I don't have proof, nothing concrete, but the signs are too deliberate to ignore. Phone calls that drop as soon as I answer. Letters in my mailbox addressed to names I've never used. The same man in a beige coat, sitting across from me on 3 different train rides, always reading, always watching without looking. I woke up one night to find my apartment door unlocked. I always bolt it. Always. Nothing was taken, but the salt shaker was turned upside down and placed on the floor. Nothing else touched. Just that. Like a message, or a warning, or a test. A week later, I found a voice recorder tucked in the lining of my suitcase. I'd never seen it before. I pressed play. Static for 5 seconds, then a single phrase, "You need to stop talking." I threw it in the trash. The next morning it was back in my bag. Same place, same message, but this time it ended with a click and the faint beginning of music. 3 notes, always the same ones from the chair. They're not memories anymore, they're instructions. At night, my dreams feel orchestrated, too structured, too vivid. I see a keypad, 4 numbers, always the same sequence. 0811. A door opens. A hallway stretches too far. I walk. I hear someone breathing just behind me, but when I turn, there's nothing. And then I wake up gripping my sheets like a man pulled from the ocean. One night, I dreamt of injecting someone, not myself, someone else. A man tied to a table. His face blurred but familiar. I pushed the needle in, whispered something in his ear, then said, "You'll forget. That's the mercy." When I woke up, my hands smelled like rubbing alcohol. The dreams are syncing with real events. I thought they were echoes, but now they're becoming triggers. I saw a woman on the street last week and my heart nearly stopped. I'd never seen her before, but my body reacted like I had orders. My hands trembled. My feet started moving toward her. She passed me without a glance, but she was humming the song. I stopped talking to friends. Too dangerous. One of them asked too many questions, and 3 days later, he emailed me a single line. "Forget it. Please." Then he deleted his accounts, phone number gone, like he vanished into smoke. I've started recording myself at night, just to know what I'm doing. Last night I played back the tape and heard my own voice reciting a list of names. I don't know any of them. In the middle of the list I laugh, soft, cold, unfamiliar. Then I whisper, "Phase 2 complete." What the hell is Phase 2? I tore the recorder apart, flushed the pieces. Then I found a second one under my bed, still recording. I saw someone outside my window 2 nights ago, standing across the street, perfectly still. I live on the 5th floor. There's no building there, just open air. I blinked and he was gone. They're applying pressure now, gentle at first, enough to rattle, not enough to destroy. But the rhythm is clear. Repetition, confusion, isolation, then trigger. It's a pattern. It's always been a pattern. I found an old manila envelope taped to the underside of my kitchen sink. I never placed it there. Inside, a photograph of me, young, maybe 20, sitting in the chair, mouth open, eyes blank, a doctor standing behind me, smiling, scrawled on the back in red ink. This version is unstable. I think they're trying to reset me. I think the dreams are just the beginning of the reprogramming, softening the mind, breaking it down again. Maybe I was never meant to get this far. But something is resisting. Some part of me is awake now and it's learning, tracking the cycles, marking the patterns. I'm writing everything. Even if they take me, there'll be a record. And if they don't, then the next phase is already moving through me. Because last night I didn't dream, I just acted. I woke up standing, no memory of getting out of bed, no alarm, no transition, just darkness and breath and the sound of my own heartbeat in my ears. I was in the living room, barefoot, facing the window. A single phrase was repeating in my head like a scratched record. "You're ready now." But ready for what? I checked my phone. 4 hours of sleep. A single outgoing call I don't remember making. No number, just restricted. Duration, 1 minute, 13 seconds. I played the voicemail I left. It was my voice, calm, deliberate, Unit stable, clearance level maintained, no contamination, no contact. That's when the idea stopped being a nightmare and started becoming a memory. What if I wasn't just a subject? What if I had been on the other side? A handler, a technician, a link in the chain. Maybe that's why the memories feel familiar. They are mine, but not from the side I thought. I began reviewing the names I'd whispered in my sleep. I looked them up, one by one. Some were dead, some missing. One lived 3 towns over. I drove past his house. He was watering the lawn, humming to himself, the same melody, 3 notes. I didn't stop the car. I spent the next week combing through old folders, rechecking every photo, every file. New things started to appear, lines I'd missed before. Phrases like initiated monitor sequence and subject was unaware of field placement. I started to see patterns in my own notes, handwriting shifts, linguistic codes, repetitive phrasing. The margins weren't margins anymore. They were filled with numbers and locations and times, meetings I had arranged, trips I had funded, facilities I had approved. And I remembered the chair again. Only this time I wasn't in it. I was behind the mirror, clipboard in hand, watching. I could hear myself speaking, instructing, reassuring. "Don't worry," I told the person strapped down. "This is temporary. You won't remember." It wasn't a dream. It was protocol. I tried to convince myself this wasn't happening, that maybe I was just collapsing, losing track of time, merging fiction and fear. But then I found the video, a VHS tape, unmarked, stuffed in the back of an old box, labeled taxes. I don't remember placing it there. I played it. Black screen, a flash of static. Then me, younger but unmistakably me, wearing a lab coat, smiling, speaking into a microphone. Subject 87 showed remarkable compliance. Progression to behavioral override complete. 108 has been prepared for cross-conditioning. The camera panned. A figure sat in the chair, unmoving, strapped down. It was him, the man in the trailer, and I had put him there. I ejected the tape, sat in the dark for hours, trying to make sense of it, trying to reconcile who I was with what I'd done. But that's when it hit me. Maybe that was the point. MKUltra wasn't just about creating program minds. It was about building systems, self-sustaining networks of control, people who could be both puppet and puppeteer, people who would reset themselves, who would forget what they'd done and do it again. I was part of it. I am part of it. And maybe I've done this before, hundreds of times. Maybe this very process, this panic, this unraveling is just a controlled burn, a maintenance protocol to keep me from breaking entirely. Every so often I remember, just enough, and then I'm silenced, reset, sent back in, to monitor others, to trigger someone else's awakening, to clean up loose threads. I'm not even sure I'm writing this on my own. Maybe I was instructed to. Maybe this message is for someone else entirely. A code buried in paranoia, a signal wrapped in confession. And if you're still listening, maybe it was meant for you. I don't know if I'm waking up or just activating. The lines have blurred too far to separate. What felt like memory might be scripting. What I thought were questions might have always been commands. Maybe the fear was just part of the sequence, designed to keep me running in circles until the next signal arrives. I hear that music everywhere now. Not loud, just faint. In elevators, in static, in silence. 3 notes. Always 3. Sometimes I catch myself reaching for a pen without knowing why. Writing names, drawing symbols I've never studied, leaving messages I don't remember writing. And earlier tonight, the phone rang. I didn't answer. But I knew what it was. I knew what it meant. It's happening again. And I think this is why I'm telling you all this, not as a warning, but as a relay. Because I was told to speak, and now I've begun.